I call Clayton Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak against this amendment, the Immigration Amendment Bill number 2. But before I start things off, I'd like to wish you all a very warm and festive season for 2015, and I'm sure everybody's excited to be back in the house with their legs under the table as I am. We have given this bill some serious consideration and a lot of discussion, and we think that what's been said today, albeit in opposition, are on the right track by opposing this legislation, Mr Speaker. We feel that the bigger picture has not been really brought to the forefront of the minds of New Zealanders. And I think what we need to really get across here is the importance of looking after New Zealand jobs for New Zealanders first and foremost. Now, that's not saying that we don't have issues within our system currently, and recently as last year I personally was involved in a situation where we had immigrant workers here in the lovely Bay of Plenty in Tauranga working on kiwi fruit orchards. And as it was raised, the issue came about because in fact the workers themselves were working for immigrants and they had been exploited to the worst possible level that I could ever imagine or hope to ever see. And New Zealand First spoke up about this and got to the bottom of what was going on. And the crux of the matter was these people were brought out from Fiji. They'd had to sell their cars. They had had to mortgage their small properties that they had to get enough money together to get an agency, which was of course based here in New Zealand, to force them over here to give them the world as far as first world wages, accommodation and great working conditions. And of course when they arrived in this fabulous country, the land of milk and honey, none of that was there for them. And they were left with no other choice. They were stranded on New Zealand. They'd been here for 6 weeks and had earned themselves $160 working full-time on these orchards, working for themselves, other immigrants that had come out to New Zealand, which I find absolutely disgusting. However, these people had no choice. They were stuck in New Zealand, and it was only by New Zealand First intervention that we actually got these people sent back home to New Zealand. And we actually have to stop this. But the cure is actually in the prevention, Mr Speaker, and not in these actions, not in these puffery and the fluffery that's been put forward here that this is going to be the cure. This is not going to be the panacea that will fix this immigration problem for our migrant workers. We have to have far more stringent controls on our borders. We have to do far more for the people of New Zealand. We have to look after our people first before we start looking at migrant labour for all of the jobs. Currently, Mr Speaker, as we'll all be aware because it's been touched on earlier on today in several speeches that we've heard, we have 138,000 temporary migrant workers in this country. We have another 100,000 student visas who've got extended rights to be able to work in this country, taking away precious jobs from those Kiwis who need them the most. Now, we're not against student visas. We're not against those people coming out to study in our country because that's good for our economy, that's good for our schools, our universities. But we are against the fact that these jobs are being soaked up, taken away from the people, the most vulnerable unemployed workers that we call our New Zealand citizens. We've got 54,000 working holiday visas per annum coming through in the country at the moment, and there is yet another 143,000 current unemployed. Now, these are unemployed with 0 hours of work, and yet there's far more, estimated at some 230,000 people that are actually only got part-time work that are not considered to be unemployed in this country. We've got some serious issues, Mr Speaker, and they go back some time, and if I cast back to a story that was broken by TV3 in November of 2013, it was said here the Immigration Department is stamping visas like a factory, trying desperately to make up for the number of Kiwis who are leaving permanently. This is what has been told. Winston Peters spoke up and said that 20% of all of these visas that have been stamped have been reported to be unfairly stamped and under conditions that wouldn't be usual. We are forcing people into this country, and we should be spending more time, more money, more effort on looking after our borders and tightening up those controls. Mr Speaker, as early as today in the Dominion Post, we had an article written, and you'll all be aware of that, about the workers, our local New Zealand workers whose jobs have been taken up by immigrant labour coming over from South Africa and India, taking up those media positions for the Cricket World Cup. This, to me, I can't get my head around. If we're a nationalistic country looking after the best outcome for New Zealand, everything we should be putting into it is in our powers is to look after these people that live in this country. And I understand absolutely implicitly, and I have sympathies and understanding with the comments that have been made by Ian Lees-Galloways and other members from the Green Party this afternoon. They are vulnerable workers. There are vulnerable migrant workers out there that need our support and help. But if we actually put resource and effort into the areas that need it the most, then that is going to be more beneficial, and that is at our borders. And when I talk about the Bill's Digest, I read through that this afternoon. We've got great words here like biometric information, exploitation of migrant workers and cracking down on this, electronic notifications. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to talk about in great length and details decisions made using absolute discretion about having deportation where information fraudulent, forged or false, misleading or concealed can actually force these migrant labour workers out of our country. But there's only one line here, one line that talks about border security. Our security at our border is the most important. And I've spent 25 years in hospitality, and it's a saying that's gone around for many, many years. If you can control your room by controlling the people that come into it, you're not going to have the problems that you're going to have later on. And that's by having good security measures at your front door to ensure you have the right people doing the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We oppose this bill. Thank you.
I call Andrew Bailey.